All right, so you're ready to tackle this VMware exam, huh?
The 2VM-13.24, that's a big one.
It is, but it's a good one to have under your belt. You're on your way to becoming a VCP VCF architect, which means you're not just working with VMware.
You're designing and building entire cloud environments using their cloud foundation. That's impressive.
It is, and we're here to help you conquer that exam. We've got a ton of practice questions, explanations, all that good stuff.
But let's be clear, our goal here isn't just to help you pass a test.
No way. It's about understanding the why. Why are these the right answers? Really getting that deep knowledge.
Exactly, because that's what's going to make you a truly great VCF architect. Not just passing an exam, but really knowing your stuff.
Couldn't agree more. So shall we dive into the first question then?
Let's do it.
Okay, so this one focuses on VSAN, which is kind of a big deal in VMware Cloud Foundation, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a foundation of your storage within Cloud Foundation.
And this question, it highlights how even, people who've been working with VMware for years, they can still trip up.
Trip up on what?
Storage policies. It seems simple, but misconfigured policies, ooh, it can really mess up VM performance.
Yeah, it can be a real headache, like trying to run a city with traffic lights that are all out of whack.
So what kind of problems are we talking about here? Like what happens when those policies are messed up?
Well, think about it. VAN uses those policies to figure out how data is spread out, how it's protected across all the storage you've got in your Cloud Foundation.
Right.
If those policies aren't set up right, it's like chaos. You get slow performance, things lag, and nobody's happy.
So what are some of the things that can go wrong with those policies? What are some examples of misconfigurations people should watch out for?
Well, one common one is setting the wrong failure tolerance levels. VN lets you decide how many host failures your data can handle.
Right.
But if you set that too high, you might end up using way more storage than you need.
Oh, so it impacts performance that way.
Exactly, because now you're putting a strain on your resources.
So you've got to find a balance then.
Exactly. Enough protection, but not so much that you're bogging things down. Another thing people mess up is striping and RAID settings.
Ah, yeah.
Those determine how your data is spread across multiple disks. Mess those up, and you could end up with bottlenecks, like traffic jams, in your data.
So we've got failure tolerance and RAID settings. Anything else to watch out for?
Yeah, the caching mechanism is another big one.
Hatching.
Yeah, you can use policies to tell VSM which data is important to cache. The stuff that's accessed a lot.
Right, makes sense.
But if you're caching the wrong things, it can actually make things slower.
So it's not just about having cache, it's about caching the right things.
Exactly. You have to know what your applications need and then set those policies to match.
Okay, so we've talked about storage policies, and it seems like to really master them, you need a deep understanding of the technology, but also
The business needs, yeah.
Exactly. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about that bigger picture. Why are we even building this cloud foundation in the first place?
That's a great question. It might seem simple, but it actually gets to the heart of what it means to be a VCF architect.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, the key here is aligning your tech decisions with the business goals. It's not just about building the most impressive tech stack.
So it's not just about having the newest, coolest cloud foundation.
It's tempting, I know. But you have to think about what the business is trying to achieve. Is it rapid growth? Is it rock-solid security?
So you might prioritize different things, like performance might not always be the top priority.
Right. Maybe scalability is more important, or maybe it's availability. It depends on what the business needs.
So you've really got to understand the business side of things, too.
You got it. That's what makes a VCF architect so valuable. They can bridge that gap between technology and the business.
Okay, that makes sense. We've tackled storage policies. We've talked about aligning with business goals. Now let's move on to our third question. This one's all about the design phase of a VMware Cloud Foundation.
Ah, the blueprint stage. This is where we start mapping out our cloud environment.
Exactly. So what are some of the key things to keep in mind during this phase?
Well, this question really zeroes in on what a conceptual design is and what an I is in T. It's about the big picture.
So we're not talking about picking out specific servers and things like that?
Not yet, no. Think of it like sketching out a floor plan for a house. You're deciding how many rooms, how they connect, the flow.
But you're not picking out paint colors yet.
Exactly. Similarly, in a cloud foundation conceptual design, you're figuring out things like how many virtual data centers you'll need, how your network is segmented, that kind of thing.
Okay, so it's about establishing the framework before you get into the nitty-gritty details?
Exactly. And that logical organization is super important because it lays the groundwork for everything else.
It's like if you try to build a house without a blueprint.
You're going to have a bad time.
Exactly. So what are some of the things that people might mistakenly include in this conceptual design phase?
Well, things like the exact number of physical hosts you'll need, or detailed configuration settings, the licensing model. Those come later.
So those are important, but they're not part of the initial conceptual design.
Right. First, you need that solid framework, that big picture understanding.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this is so important, not just for the exam, but for actually being a good VCF architect.
It's foundational. If you can nail that logical architecture, everything else becomes so much easier.
Makes sense. All right, so we've covered storage policies, aligning with business goals, and now this idea of a conceptual design. We've got a good foundation. But now comes the challenge.
The challenge of what?
Keeping it all running smoothly. How do we monitor and maintain this cloud foundation once it's up and running? And that brings us to our next question, which is all about, well, it's about keeping things healthy.
Ah, yes, keeping that cloud foundation humming along nicely. And the question really highlights the importance of vRealize operations. VROPs, as we like to call it.
VROPs. Okay, so tell me what's so special about this VROPs? What does it do? So we're not just like checking if the servers are still on, right?
No. This is way more than just basic monitoring.
Okay, so what makes it so special, especially when it comes to managing a cloud foundation?
It's about being proactive. VROPs gives you this incredible view into everything that's happening.
Like what kind of view are we talking about?
Health, performance, capacity, you name it. VROPs has its finger on the pulse of your entire cloud foundation.
So it's like having, a whole team of experts constantly monitoring your system.
Exactly. And they're not just watching, they're analyzing. VROPs can actually spot potential problems before they even become real problems.
Oh, so it's not just about fixing things when they break. It's about preventing those breakdowns from happening in the first place.
Precisely. It gives you real-time data. You can customize dashboards. You get intelligent alerts. It's all about staying ahead of the game.
Okay, that sounds pretty powerful. But the question mentions other ways to monitor things, like using vSphere charts or setting up SNMP traps. What about those?
Yeah, those have their place, but they're not quite in the same league as VROPs.
Oh, okay. Why not?
Well, vSphere charts, they give you basic metrics, but they're not as deep. VROPs gives you more granular insights, predictive analytics. They're really good stuff.
Okay, so it's like the difference between, I don't know, a basic checkup and a full medical scan.
That's a good way to put it. And SNMP traps, they can alert you to certain events, but they don't give you the big picture.
Right.
And managing Cloud Foundation, you really need that holistic view.
So it sounds like VROPs is kind of the gold standard here.
It's definitely the way to go if you're serious about managing Cloud Foundation effectively.
Okay, so VROPs, that's for keeping things running smoothly. But what about squeezing every bit of performance out of our workloads? That's what this next question's all about.
And guess what makes a reappearance?
I'm going to guess those VTAN storage policies.
You got it. It's all connected.
So it's not just about keeping the lights on, it's about making sure everything's running as fast as it can.
Exactly. You can have the best hardware, but if your storage policies are messed up, your applications will suffer.
So what are some of the things we can tweak in those policies to really optimize performance?
Well, first, you have to know your workloads. What are their demands? What do they need to run their best?
Okay, and then what?
Then you start adjusting those storage policy settings. Things like stripe width, cache reservation, failure tolerance levels.
Those sound kind of technical.
They are, but they're important. For example, increasing the stripe width can help if you need high throughput.
Okay, so it's about understanding what each setting does and then tweaking it to match what your applications need.
Exactly. And it's not one size fits all. You might have different policies for different applications or even different parts of your storage.
It's starting to sound a bit complex.
It can be, but that's where VROPs can actually help too. Remember all that monitoring we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, it can also analyze your workloads and suggest ways to optimize them.
Oh, so it can actually help you fine-tune those storage policies.
Absolutely. It's like having a performance expert right there in your management platform.
That's pretty cool. The question also mentions a few other strategies, like putting all your workloads in one vSphere cluster or always using the Fennis performance storage tier. What about those?
Well, those might seem tempting, but they're not always the best solution.
Oh, how come?
Well, cramming everything into one cluster could actually lead to problems.
Problems like what?
Resource contention, for one. Everything fighting for the same resources, and it creates a single point of failure.
Oh, right. So if that cluster goes down, everything goes down.
Exactly. And always using the high-performance storage, that could be expensive, and it's not always necessary.
So it's about choosing the right level of performance, not just going for the most powerful option all the time.
Exactly. VSN storage policies give you that flexibility to choose.
Okay, makes sense. What about using NSX for managing network traffic? Wouldn't that be the key to better performance?
NSX is great, don't get me wrong. It's powerful for network virtualization and security, but it's only one piece of the puzzle.
Oh, okay, so it's not just about having a fast network.
Right. You can have the fastest network in the world, but if your storage is slow or your servers are overloaded, you're still going to have problems.
So it's about looking at the whole system.
Exactly. Compute, storage, network, everything has to work together. And that's why those VN storage policies are so crucial. They're a key part of making sure your entire cloud foundation is running at peak performance.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of VMware Cloud Foundation. We hope you found it helpful. And for all of you listening, good luck on that 2V0 13.24 exam. We know you can do it. Until next time, keep on learning, keep on building, and keep on pushing the boundaries of what's possible with VMware Cloud Foundation.